Welcome to Civitas LA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. In these bi-weekly conversations, we hear from, learn from, and are truly inspired by those civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making Los Angeles a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Now more than ever, we aim to elevate civic discourse, foster community connections, and promote civic knowledge and engagement across the greater Los Angeles region while elevating diverse and emerging voices in the civic conversation of our region. Home to the Port of Los Angeles, one of the busiest seaports in the world and the leading container port in the U.S., the San Pedro community consists of just under 26 square miles with a population of approximately 200,000. However, as the gateway for international commerce, this historic community occupies a singularly unique place in the greater L.A. region. San Pedro's unique history and small-town feel offers an atmosphere and lifestyle that's really appealing to some and certainly very different from what many expect of the hustle and bustle of L.A., the second largest city in our country. But with significant public investment in the area, catalyzing even more private investment, the San Pedro community is undergoing transformation, causing many to consider, how does one go about preserving the past, yet position the community for significant economic opportunity moving forward? So we are delighted to have with us today to discuss this transformation underway in San Pedro, how these challenges and opportunities are being navigated, and the role his company is playing in this transformation is Wayne Ratkovich, founder and chairman of the Ratkovich Company, someone who certainly knows a few things about building community. The work and impact of the Ratkovich Company, with over 40 years of building community, is felt in most every corner of Southern California and certainly across the landscape of the city of Los Angeles. So with us this afternoon is Wayne Ratkovich. Wayne, welcome to Civitas LA.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. It's a delight to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you on this warm LA afternoon. As we start our conversation, Wayne, share with us a bit about your background and your journey to your current role.
Well, when I graduated from UCLA and spent a little time in the Army, I was ready to go to work, and I did. I went to the predecessor company that is now known as CBRE. It was then just simply CB or Coldwell Banker. I worked there for 8 years, learning the real estate business, mostly in industrial real estate, and then decided that I was ready to become a developer, and I accepted a position with a development company that was developing industrial properties in Los Angeles. I spent 5 years there and decided I was ready to start my own firm. So in 1977, that's what I did. I started my own firm in downtown Los Angeles.
Outstanding. Well, before we get into our conversation, we always like to have a little bit lightning round. And since you've got a deep history in this region, and this is a podcast focused on our region, let's get a sense of your Los Angeles. Quick lightning round questions. Favorite restaurant or two?
Dwayne, I have one favorite restaurant and always will. It's called The Rex. The Rex is no longer in business, but in 1980, the Rex restaurant opened in the ground floor of the Oviatt building in downtown Los Angeles. And it was a very high-end, very elegant, beautiful, and magical place for 17 wonderful years. And it not only helped me transform the Oviatt building, but it helped me to see a new career for myself and my company in urban real estate development. It was a remarkable restaurant that said a lot about the potential for downtown Los Angeles, because no one expected that an elegant, expensive restaurant in downtown Los Angeles in 1980 had any chance of success. So it was wonderful to see a transformation, and that restaurant led the way. So it will always be my favorite. Sorry, I can't take you there anymore.
Okay.
But,
okay, so give us a second favorite.
Well, I'll tell you that my second favorite are local restaurants, are the places that I can almost walk to from my home.
Okay.
Not all of them, but I can walk to some of them. I'm talking about the little restaurants that are on Larchmont Boulevard.
Excellent.
Le Petit Greek is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Marino's, which is on Melrose,
right?
is another of my favorites.
Okay.
The Marino family is a great family, and wonderful restaurant, always very comfortable to be there.
Excellent. Favorite watering hole if you have one?
When I visit a watering hole, which is not as frequent as I perhaps would like, it's usually at the Jonathan Club in downtown Los Angeles at the Tap Room. It's a private club, but I belonged to it for a very long time.
Excellent.
And it's within walking distance of my office. It's a very comfortable place to visit.
Favorite place to take a visitor to the region?
Well, I always like to take people to where they want to go. And interestingly enough, I want to go see Hollywood is the most common response. And that's becoming a more pleasant experience as time goes on. But I always enjoy people taking them to the coastline. I think that's one of our great attributes.
Sure.
As far as shopping places and places that reflect Los Angeles history, I would say that the farmers market is my favorite. Mm-hmm. Visitors always seem to enjoy going to the farmers market at 3rd and Fairfax. And the other place I find interesting to take people is to Old Pasadena.
Okay.
For that kind of thing. So
that's a first time mention here. I appreciate that. So given that you've got a deep history in the region, share with us a hidden gem. Give us your favorite hidden gem.
This is quite personal, but it is called the Venda Museum, and it's in Culver City. The Venda Museum is a museum of the Cold War. It was started by a young man, still a student at UCLA at the time, who had a professor who guided him in the right direction. And the Venda Museum is now the largest museum in the world about the Cold War. And I was always been fascinated by the Cold War, and the museum is a fascinating place. That's one.
That's outstanding. I did not know that museum. Favorite street food?
I'd have to probably say it's a shawarma somewhere in Little Armenia.
Okay.
That'd be my favorite.
Okay. And favorite neighborhood?
Well, it has to be my neighborhood, which is the Larchmont Hancock Park, Windsor Square area.
Outstanding. I love the area as well. Wayne, that was great. So let's begin our conversation today.
Sure.
Give our audience an overview of your organization, the Ratkovich Company, its own history, how it's evolved over time, and the types of work that you've undertaken.
Well, I mentioned earlier about the Rex Restaurant and the Oviatt building, and that was really the beginning of the company as it is formed today. At the time, there were only 2 or 3 of us that were starting things out. But we had a successful venture with the Oviatt building in the late 70s and into the early 80s. And it opened up an opportunity to me and opened up an idea in my mind that urban development was far more enriching, far more rewarding than what I had been doing, which was mostly industrial development. So I wrote a new mission statement for my company, and that mission statement was to profitably produce developments that improve the quality of urban life. And that is what my company was going to do from that point forward. And that's what we have tried to do. And that's what has brought people to us. That's what's enabled us to grow as a company and to have some very good successes along the way. So we're very proud of the fact that as a relatively modestly sized development company, we have had a pretty good impact on the city of Los Angeles. That's not something we expected that we'd be able to do.
Sure. Well, you've mentioned a couple of times now the Oviatt building. So for our listeners, nationally and internationally, tell us about this particular property in downtown Los Angeles. What was special about this, and how did your organization get involved in this project, and how did that change the trajectory of your career?
The Oviatt building is a 100,000 square foot, 13-story, primarily an office building built in 1928. It was built by a man named James Oviatt, who operated a clothing store called Alexander and Oviatt in the ground floor space. That ground floor space was 2 levels. It was 14,000 feet. In building the building, Oviatt commissioned René Lalique to do the glasswork in the building, and it was the largest commercial commission ever given to René Lalique on a building, on a commercial building. It was a remarkable building when we saw it in 1977. But it was really priced simply for demolition, to be torn down, because Parking was more valuable than most office space in downtown Los Angeles at the time. The building had been gifted to the Archdiocese of Los Angeles by the Oviatt heirs, and the Archdiocese simply wanted it converted into cash, and so they put it on the market for $500,000. That was $5 a square foot. And
the entire building.
Even though I didn't know anything about office space at the time, I did know that $5 a square foot was very inexpensive.
That's pretty good. Oh, wow.
It was priced to be a parking lot. And we said, no, this building has some potential left in it. And so we stayed with that building. And it turned out to be among the very first historic buildings to be saved in Los Angeles. At that time, saving historic buildings was not a thing commonly done in Los Angeles. In fact, I think you can say almost never done in Los Angeles. So the fact that we ended up restoring a historic building gave us a great deal of notice. I remarked at the time that we were getting more newspaper coverage than McGuire's 1 million square feet up on Bunker Hill. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that's true, but it was remarkable how much this little building, how much this attention got. And when the Rex restaurant opened and became the restaurant in Los Angeles, it was even a greater experience and a greater notice.
And who's in that building today? Was it offices?
Yes, and the Rex restaurant allowed us to dramatically increase the value of the building. And we had to put together an investment group to buy the building and spend $5.5 million on it, rehabbing it. And we received an unsolicited offer in the early 80s of $13.5 million, and we just couldn't say no to that. And as much as I hated to leave the Oviatt building, we did. And that enabled us to go on and do other projects. The Oviatt building lasted about as long as Mauro Vincente, who was the entrepreneurial restaurateur, lasted. Mauro unfortunately died of pancreatic cancer in his early 50s, and that was the end of the Rex restaurant. The space is still there. It still is very lovely, and I hope it has a bright future.
Well, Wayne, of all the exciting projects that your team has undertaken over the years, development, new development, and redevelopment, share with us a few of your favorites if you can.
Well, obviously the Oviatt was one. The Wiltern Theater was another. Chapman Market, another. I think the more recently, a couple of the large projects we did includes the Hercules campus in Playa Vista, which was 11 buildings that were part of Hughes Aircraft Company's headquarters, including a hangar in which the famous Spruce Goose was built. That was a project that we purchased in 2010, I believe it was, mm-hmm. and it was virtually abandoned. 28 acres of land and 525,000 square feet and 11 buildings. And it needed a future, and we were able to rescue it and see an opportunity and put it together and make it happen. The block in downtown Los Angeles is a project we did, and that is a very large one. That is over 2 million square feet and includes a hotel, an office building, and a retail center. And we transformed that property. It was a property that enclosed itself from the city. Mm-hmm. And we said it's time to open it up, and that's what we did. So that's another project that we're very proud of. It's a new, all but new hotel, retail center, and office building there now.
Well, my office was downtown some years ago, and I saw that project transform overnight. Tremendous project indeed.
And then we have, at the moment, we have a project in Alhambra, which is the largest privately owned property in Alhambra. It is an office building development primarily, but we've transitioned it into a mixed use. We're in the process of adding to office buildings and retail stores a residential component. So it will be a mixed use community when it's completed, urban mixed use community.
Excellent.
And then there is the project that we're doing in San Pedro, which is 42 acres of waterfront at San Pedro Harbor.
And we're going to get to that shortly. Yeah. So one of the things that your organization prides itself on is that its success is based on seeing value where others haven't. So what are some of the characteristics of either a community or a prospective project that motivates you?
Well, we look at properties and we try to see where is that opportunity. What is it that we can see that perhaps others have missed? I think you can say that pretty accurately about what took place at our Hercules campus in Playa Vista. That property sat and rotted itself away for quite a while before we came along and said, you know what, this is not something that should rot away. We should fix this. This is a historic property, and it is an extraordinarily well-located property. Mm-hmm. So we went after it. We had to do a lot of hard work because in 2010, the Silicon Beach had not arrived in Los Angeles.
Sure,
so we had to convince people that it was coming. So that's what we do, Dwayne, is we look for opportunities. Hopefully we see them before someone else does, and we transition them, whether it means it's appreciating architecture, recognizing a market opportunity, or just simply recognize a financial opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So walk us through San Pedro and what caught your attention down there at the waterfront that got you motivated to look into this opportunity in the San Pedro area.
Well, the Port of Los Angeles and the City of Los Angeles sort of combined and put together a committee to seek a developer to bring back to life a development that was called Ports of Call. Okay. And the lease on the Ports of Call property was coming to a close, a 50-year lease. And the property had declined pretty substantially, as you would expect, toward the end of a lease. No one's going to put money into a property that they're about to lose. So the city was looking for a developer to bring that property back. And we thought it was an extraordinary opportunity. We still do. And it is an opportunity really of a lifetime for us. The site is 42 acres on the waterfront of Los Angeles. The water frontage, the linear footage along the front of the property is almost a mile on the water. So it is sitting there waiting for a new opportunity. And when we were interviewed by the port and by the city, they asked us what we thought should be done with it. We recognize that there are limitations that are imposed by the state and by the city on what kind of uses can be done. So we focused on what we called festival retail, which was a word created by developer Jim Rouse.
In Harbor in Baltimore.
In Boston, and Harbor Place in Boston. And we believe that was the appropriate use of that property. Like most developers, we had more ambitious plans than just festival marketplace, but that really is the limitations of what one can do right now on the property.
And let's talk about the role of public policy in advancing your role in this, because I know back in 2017 the city had a ballot measure, Measure P, which I probably overlooked and probably passed on that particular question, but it was quite significant to engaging private interests in the waterfront. Do you remember that initiative and what was so important about that initiative? Because I remember people like developers like Rick Caruso and Eli Broad and other builders in this community really got behind that, and this was quite important.
Well, Dwayne, the real reason for that was the fact that the city had a policy that a 50-year limit was imposed on any ground leases that they enter into. And as you would expect, at some point in time, usually about 25 years into that, no one's going to invest much money in it because the lease is going to be expiring in 25 years. So it's a declining asset. And so what we urged the city attorney, and we urged anybody who would listen to us, to amend the policy and to extend the lease to a longer term if the developer is prepared to invest in the property and maintain it and grow it forward. We were turned down at every stop that we made. We were told it was legally impossible. It was a charter issue, and to change the charter, you have to have a vote of the public, and that was impossible. The one person who didn't think it was impossible was Joe Buscaino, the councilman for that area. Sure. And to our surprise, and I swear that we had nothing to do with this, to our surprise, Joe Buscaino took the initiative to put that measure on the ballot. He not only put it on the ballot, he campaigned for it. And to our pleasant surprise, it was passed.
Outstanding.
So every once in a while, we have reason to praise our public officials, and this is clearly one of them.
I like that term, every once in a while. So you're quoted as saying that the West Harbor project and your work in San Pedro, itself a city within a city often overlooked, really represents an opportunity to re-energize a unique downtown. So describe for us the West Harbor project overall.
Well, the West Harbor project, as I mentioned earlier, is sitting on a site of 42 acres now. A good portion of that site is going to be used simply for parking. But the components of that development are going to be a almost 6,000-seat amphitheater on the waterfront. That's an amphitheater about the size of the Greek Theater. We are currently negotiating with the Nederlander Group to operate it and to be a co-owner with us. And the rest of the project will be a combination of retail, almost all of which will be food and beverage, waterfront dining. Even in its waning moments, the Ports of Call site did over $50 million a year of sales in the restaurants. It's pretty remarkable. So it is a very attractive site. It brings people down to San Pedro. It brings people to the waterfront, which is hard to find sometimes in Los Angeles. And so it's going to be a wonderful dining opportunity. We have a lot of interest right now, thankfully emerging as the virus begins to pass away. A lot of restaurateurs are anxious to get back in business. Most of our dining is going to be outdoors dining, so it's even more attractive. And we have a great deal of interest from restaurants and some ancillary retailers that we think will create a wonderful environment on the waterfront.
So, I understand the size and scope of West Harbor actually makes it bigger than the Grove, which is quite a retail attraction for our region in the Fairfax community. So what's going to be different between West Harbor and the Grove, for example?
Well, there's quite a difference. West Harbor is it's a little misleading to say it's much larger than the Grove, because a good portion of our property is going to be used, at least initially in the early years, for parking. Okay. We're not going to build a parking structure at this point. And almost all of our retailers will be food related. It will be more a place of dining than a place of shopping for products. So it's a little different project, but I hope it is as successful as the Grove has been.
The Grove has been hugely successful. And, given COVID, what are the timelines for the project to move forward and be completed?
Dwayne, we have completed the design for the first phase of the project, and we are permit ready. So that's no small achievement in this day's environment. But we are ready to start construction. Take us a very short time to pull that permit. What we need to do is decide on who our tenants are going to be, welcome the ones that we think would be our best fit, and sign a few up. But I have a feeling that the way things are going right now, we will be under construction this year.
Okay, excellent. And if construction begins this year, are we looking at 2023, 2024?
Oh, I hope we're looking at 2022 and maybe early 2023.
Okay. Well, we all can't wait to get to outdoor concerts wherever they may be, whether it's the Hollywood Bowl or the Greek Theater or down at the new theater in San Pedro. We'll be there.
Well, great, and I hope you'll join me sitting on the deck of the Iowa, which is going to be part of our project too.
I cannot tell you how much I miss live music here in Los Angeles, particularly outdoors. But change is always difficult, and we always want to talk about community and how communities deal with change and understand their concerns. And as you know, as a developer dealing and navigating throughout this region, communities are always important to engage in this process. So I'm trying to understand, how the San Pedro community has worked with you, how you've worked with the community to address, their concerns about redevelopment and what this all means for them. How have you worked with them, and how have they responded?
Well, as background, I think it's fair to say that in recent years, the last few decades, San Pedro has not been treated well as a part of Los Angeles. It was put under the downtown San Pedro portion. It particularly was put under the control of the redevelopment agency, and I don't think our redevelopment agency deserves a lot of credit for what they did or didn't do. So that has imposed, and understandably so, the concern on the part of local citizens about what is the future of downtown San Pedro. I happen to think it's a lovely little city. It's an old-fashioned one. It reminds you of the village environment that Main Streets used to be. It's really kind of a Main Street environment. And it deserves a better treatment than it's had in the past. So we hope we're part of that. We hope we can bring life back to the waterfront. The Port of Los Angeles has made a huge commitment to the San Pedro community. And between the port and developers like ourselves, I think there's a very bright future for that neighborhood. Understandably, there are people who don't believe that it's possible to make something happen positive in San Pedro, and that's just the way things go, and we're going to try to bring them over to our side here soon.
Sure. Well, we always like to talk about partnerships and collaboration. So whether it's, the San Pedro project or others, how do you view collaboration and partnerships, and how have you utilized that to advance your goals and objectives?
Well, virtually every project that we undertake is a partnership, and I say that primarily from a financial point of view, because we take on projects that are beyond our own corporate resources, and we need investors to be with us. So we're used to working with partnerships, and most of those are financial partnerships. They are overwhelmingly with institutional investors, like AIG and Cigna and Prudential. Those are some of our investors. So we are used to working in partnerships, but we also have to work in partnership with the community that we're in. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming more and more important that we do that today. We're having to do it in San Pedro. We're having to do it in Alhambra. And we understand that not everybody in the world thinks wonderful things about developers. So we have to try to create a pleasant environment with our neighbors, with our residents. And sometimes that's possible, and sometimes we just can't win everybody. But we do the best we can to become that. And our mission statement says what we're all about. It's to profitably produce developments that improve the quality of urban life. We go to a community not just to make money. We want to make money, but we also want to be a contributor to the quality of life in that community. And we want to be welcomed, not fought off. So we're going to do our best to be a good corporate citizen. In Alhambra, over the 20 years that we've been there, we've given away hundreds of thousands of dollars, in excess of $600,000 to local communities. And that's as we're building a project, as we're creating the project, not the one that we've finished yet. So we want to be welcomed. I think that's what, in this day and age, every developer would like to have.
Sure. Who are you partnering with in San Pedro area?
We are partnering with, from the very outset, we joined forces with a local development group called Jericho Development, the Johnson family. And we've enjoyed a long partnership together. They're our local guys. They've been in San Pedro all their lives. Their offices in downtown San Pedro. They are tied to the community, and they are very capable business people as well. So they're our developer partners. We have a single individual who is our investing partner. He is committed to invest over $30 million in the property.
Wow.
So that's our partnership at the moment.
Excellent. So, Wayne, you have won so many awards over time, including being named the presidential honoree by the LA chapter of the American Institute of Architects, and you were named the Mary Norris Design Advocate Developer for 2020, so just last year, really singled out for your work in city building since 1977. So you've touched many corners of our region. What are some of your thoughts that you can share on our community, on community building, and on what you see happening across the city with regards to development?
Well, Dwayne, obviously, I have become attached to Los Angeles. Over my entire life has been spent here, and my 50 years of real estate development is probably in its sunset years. Fortunately, we have some very good people to continue the work of the Ratkovich Company, and we will. I sincerely hope and pray that the future of Los Angeles is a positive one and a good one. And I think we need some new, energetic, decisive, forceful leaders to make things happen. You know, in the real estate development world, we are sort of entrepreneurial ourselves to try to do things that are seemingly impossible sometimes. But we also end up doing business with people who are entrepreneurs, and we see what they believe they can do and the energy they put into it and the positive nature of their work. It makes things happen. And I think in our political world, our political environment, we need that spirit of entrepreneurship, of energy, of a positive vision of the future, and an attitude that says, let's make it happen. Let's not going to live with it. Let's make it happen. Let's go do what we want to do to build a truly great city. And there's no reason in the world why Los Angeles can't have that aspiration. I hope that we look at all of our political leaders in that light and find one that has not just this constant political maneuvering of things, but says, I've got the energy, I've got the drive, I've got the ideas, I want to make things happen, and I want you people in Los Angeles to help me. And let's get it done. I hope we can have that kind of an attitude. And if we do, then I think we have reason to be positive about the future of Los Angeles. And we have reason to be positive that there is a solution to homelessness that is a disease on the city at the moment. So there's so much talent, there's so much energy here in this city. It just needs to be brought together, and I hope we can find a leader that does that.
Sure. Wayne, what's next for the Ratkovich Company? We've talked about San Pedro and Alhambra, but are there any other projects or any other communities that you're eyeing for future projects down the road?
Yes, we are, Dwayne. We will always be on the lookout for projects like the ones we have done in the past because we're comfortable with them. Because we have experience with them, we are able to finance them perhaps a little easier than somebody else. So we're going to continue to do what we have done in the past. But as the company transitions to new leadership, as I just take the role of advisor and chairman of the company, I think it's up to the next generation where they're going to go and how they're going to get started, and we're in the middle of that now. And as the virus begins to leave us, as COVID goes away, opportunities are clearly going to be there, and they may be a little smaller in scale than we have in the past, so that we give the new generation of the Ratkovich Company a footing to grow from. But it's going to be pretty much the same. It's going to be urban. It's going to be new. We're going to continue to do exactly what we have done. That's what we're good at.
Well, Wayne, this has been a great conversation, and we're really excited to learn about the work that you've done to build community over 40 years and the work that you have ahead. But certainly earlier in our conversation, you noted that you went to UCLA, and I don't know whether you're still in mourning or that mourning has passed, given the Bruins' retreat from the NCAAs recently being knocked out by Gonzaga. Are you pained by that loss?
I was so proud of those boys. They were true. Basketball was not my sport at UCLA. I went there to play football. But if anybody that went to UCLA has always admired their basketball tradition. And John Wooden has influenced so many of us. I thought those kids played magnificently. I think they have every reason to be very proud of themselves. And I agree with the sports writers in the LA Times who called it one of the best basketball games ever played.
Yeah, what a great run. So we appreciate that. So Wayne, as we do on Civitas LA, our guest gets the final word. Any closing thoughts for our audience today?
Oh, you probably heard too much from me already, Dwayne, but I think I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. I appreciate what you're doing to help our city. And I think it's folks like you and developers like us and responsible citizens like so many people and talented citizens working together to make a great city. And I admire what you're doing.
Well, we appreciate that, and we appreciate you. This has been a great dialogue. We appreciate your time this afternoon. We appreciate all that you and your team do on behalf of our city. Hopefully we can have you or your successor team on in the future to discuss the progress that you all are making. We are deeply grateful for your presence this afternoon. Thank you. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll join us in 2 weeks as we look forward to another great conversation. Additionally, for our listeners and previous Civitas LA guests, I'm excited to again let you know about the upcoming conference May 11th, being organized by the Center for Nonprofit Management, which was episode 24 with Maura Harrington. This is a great annual event for nonprofit leaders in our community, and we're thrilled to have Maura Harrington of CNM offer a discount to our CNM guests. Please visit www.cnmsocal.org for further information. Until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And if you're on our site, we invite you to take our listener survey and offer your suggestions. We also invite you to visit our support page and consider ways that you might support this work, including through the purchase of some great new merchandise that we have, including a great Civitas LA tote bag and an outstanding Civitas LA face mask, which everyone is wearing right now. And finally, as we grow our Civitas LA family, we invite you to connect with us on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and on Twitter at Civitas_LA.